The defendants: Bernard Arnault, Francois Pinault, Johann Rupert. The charge: building trillion-dollar empires by selling you things you don't need at prices that make no rational sense and making you thank them for it. The defense: they didn't trick anyone. They simply understood human nature better than any economist, any psychologist, any philosopher ever did. And they built the proof in leather, silk, and gold. You are the jury. The prosecution will show you the mechanism, the deliberate, calculated architecture of desire. The defense will show you why it might be the most honest business model ever created. And by the end of this, you will decide whether these men are con artists or the greatest psychologists of the 20th century. Stay until the final ruling, because the last piece of evidence is the one that changes everything, and you won't see it coming. Court is now in session. The psychology of luxury. The perfect crime. The question before us today is this: can you commit fraud if the customer already knows the price is irrational and pays anyway? The prosecution: a Hermes Birkin bag costs somewhere between $10,000 and $500,000. The leather, the labor, the hardware, the actual cost of making one sits somewhere between $800 and $1,500. That markup isn't a premium. It's a sentence, and the customer signs it willingly. The prosecution's argument is simple. The luxury industry is the most sophisticated psychological operation in the history of commerce. It doesn't sell products. It sells meaning, and it charges you for the meaning it invented, packaged, and sold back to you. Objection. The defense: every purchase is emotional. Every brand is a story. The man who buys a $50,000 Rolex isn't paying for timekeeping, and he knows it. The woman who carries a Chanel 2.55 bag isn't paying for a place to store her keys, and she knows it too. Luxury doesn't hide what it is. It announces it. No deception. Full transparency. Maximum price. If that's fraud, then so is every movie ticket, every concert, every bottle of wine that costs $300 because the label says so. The evidence. Exhibit A, 1994. An LVMH internal strategy document leaked decades later describes a goal not as selling products but as selling dreams. The word dream appears 47 times. The word quality appears 11. The prosecution says, they knew. They always knew. The defense says, dreams are the only thing worth selling. The ruling: the jury will note the crime, if there is one, requires a willing victim, and the victim keeps coming back. That's either the greatest con in history or proof that meaning has always been the real product. Bernard Arnault, the architect of desire. The question before us: did one man engineer the commodification of culture, or did he simply build the museum the world was already asking for? The prosecution: Bernard Arnault was not a fashion man. He was a real estate developer from northern France. In 1984, he acquired a struggling textile conglomerate called Bouzac, which happened to own Christian Dior for 1 franc. 1 single franc. He then systematically dismantled everything else, kept Dior, and began building what would become the largest luxury conglomerate in human history. LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moët Hennessy, Dior, Givenchy, Bulgari, Tiffany, Sephora, Dom, Perignon. 69 brands under one roof. A portfolio worth over $400 billion. The prosecution's charge: Arnault didn't fall in love with fashion. He fell in love with the margin. He saw that luxury brands had something no other business had: pricing power, completely untethered from cost. He industrialized it. He scaled it. He turned artisanal French heritage into a global factory for manufactured exclusivity. Exhibit B, 2001. LVMH accelerates production of Louis Vuitton bags by moving manufacturing to lower-cost facilities while maintaining and raising retail prices. The Made in France story stays intact. The reality becomes more complicated. Sales increased 34% that year. The prosecution continued. He didn't preserve heritage. He monetized it. He bought the names, kept the logos, replaced the craftsmen with production lines, and sold the idea of the old world to a new world willing to pay any price to belong to it. One number: stop and let it land. $150 billion. That's Arnault's personal net worth at its peak, built on leather goods, champagne, and the human need to feel special. Is that a business, or is it a tax on insecurity? The defense. Before Arnault, luxury was dying. The great French houses were family businesses, bleeding money, unable to scale, trapped in a world that was changing faster than they could adapt. Arnault didn't kill heritage, he saved it. He gave Dior, Vuitton, and Givenchy the financial infrastructure they needed to survive globalization. The craftsmen still exist, the ateliers still operate. The design directors he hired, John Galliano, Marc Jacobs, Virgil Abloh, didn't water down the product. They elevated it into a global cultural conversation. Without Arnault, Louis Vuitton is a French luggage store that closes in 1997. The ruling. The prosecution has established motive, margin. The defense has established method, survival. The jury must now decide, does it matter why he saved them? If the result is that they survived, stay until the final ruling. The last exhibit in this case is the one that reframes everything you've heard so far. You won't want to miss it. Pinault vs. Arnault. The war for luxury. The question before us. When two men want to own everything, who really wins, and what gets destroyed in the process? The prosecution. Francois Pinault is the part of this story that nobody tells at dinner parties. While Arnault plays the role of the cultured visionary opera patron, art collector, friend of Presidents, Pinault built his fortune the old-fashioned way. Timber, construction materials, discount retail. He is, at his core, a trader, a deal maker, a man who sees value before others do and exits before they notice. In the 1990s, Pinault and Arnault entered into a war that would define the luxury landscape for decades. The prize, Gucci. Arnault moved first, acquiring a 34% stake in Gucci Group through a series of quiet market purchases. It was a hostile takeover in slow motion. The Gucci family had already lost control of the brand. Now Arnault wanted the rest. Exhibit C. February 1999. Gucci's management, in a move of tactical brilliance or desperation. The prosecution and defense disagree, issues $1.1 billion in new shares to Pinault's holding company, PPR, diluting Arnault's stake from 34% to 20% overnight. Arnault calls it illegal. The courts disagree. Pinault gets Gucci. The prosecution's charge, in the luxury wars, the weapons are lawyers, regulators, and shell companies. The casualties are the brands themselves, turned into battlegrounds for billionaire egos. The defense. Pinault's Kering Group, which now owns Gucci, Saint Laurent, Bottega Veneta, Balenciaga, and Alexander McQueen, rescued brands that were, by any metric, failing. Gucci, in the mid-1990s, was a byword for cheap licensing and brand dilution. Tom Ford rebuilt it. Pinault funded it. The war with Arnault wasn't ego. It was competition. And competition is what forced both men to build better, invest more, and push the boundaries of what a luxury conglomerate could become. The ruling, two men, one industry, combined worth over $200 billion. The jury should note, neither of them designed a single bag, mixed a single perfume, or cut a single piece of fabric. They built empires on the work of others and called it vision. Is that genius? Or is that just good timing with very good lawyers? Prosecution or defense? Where do you stand right now? Are these men architects of culture or architects of a very expensive illusion? Drop your verdict in the comments. I read every single one. Richemont, the quiet empire. The question before us is the most powerful luxury empire, the one nobody talks about. The prosecution. Johann Rupert doesn't do interviews, doesn't court the press, doesn't appear at fashion weeks or post on Instagram. He runs Richemont, the Swiss holding company behind Cartier, Van Cleef & Arpels IWC, Jaeger-LeCoultre, Montblanc, and a portfolio of watch and jewelry brands worth over $60 billion from near total obscurity. The prosecution's charge, Rupert represents the most honest face of the luxury machine, precisely because he makes no pretense of culture, heritage, or artistry. He inherited significant wealth from his father, Africana tobacco billionaire Anton Rupert, and used it to acquire the instruments of old-world European status. He sells the symbols of power to the newly powerful. It's efficient, it's deliberate, and it requires almost no storytelling at all. Exhibit D. 2022. Richemont rejects a $4 billion takeover bid from Farfetch and other luxury tech platforms for its e-commerce division. Netta Porter. The reason given publicly: protecting brand equity. The reason analysts suspect privately: Rupert doesn't trust anyone else to control the channel. He would rather absorb the loss than lose the leverage. The defense: Rupert's silence is the strategy. In a world where every luxury CEO is a personal brand, where Arnault is photographed with Beyoncé and Pinot's son runs Kering and dates the internet, Rupert's invisibility is the ultimate luxury signal. You don't need to be seen if you own the things people are seen wearing. Cartier doesn't need a viral moment. A Cartier love bracelet on a wrist does the marketing for a lifetime. The ruling with an inversion. Here is the piece of evidence the prosecution has been holding back. Exhibit E, 2020. At the height of the pandemic, with global luxury sales in freefall, Richemont's watch division refuses to discount, refuses to move inventory online at reduced prices, refuses to chase short-term revenue. Rupert's instruction, according to multiple industry sources: we protect the price. The price is the product. And here is where the jury must reconsider everything. Because the prosecution has argued that these men exploit human insecurity by selling overpriced objects. But Rupert's decision in 2020 reveals something the prosecution didn't account for. By refusing to discount, he protected the investment value of every customer who already owned a Cartier or an IWC. The overpriced watch held its value. The exploited customer's asset appreciated. Was Rupert protecting his margin or protecting his customer's wealth? The prosecution has no answer for that. Closing arguments and the verdict: the prosecution. These men did not create value. They created the perception of value and then charged you to maintain that perception. Every price increase is a psychological operation. Every waiting list is manufactured scarcity. Every logo is a flag planted in human insecurity. The luxury industry is the most profitable religion ever built. And like all religions, it requires you to believe before you receive anything. Closing argument: the defense. Meaning is the only commodity that never deflates. These men understood that humans have always needed symbols of achievement, of belonging, of identity. Every civilization in history has had luxury. Every culture has had status objects. Arnault, Pinot, and Rupert didn't invent the need. They just built the best infrastructure to serve it. And they became the richest men on earth because they were right. The jury instructions: before you deliver your verdict, consider three things. 1. You have purchased something in your life because of how it made you feel, not because of what it did. Everyone has. 2. Every one of these men is worth more than the entire economy of a mid-sized country built on margins that no cost justifies. That is not an accident. That is a system. 3. The system works because you let it. And you let it because, on some level, you agree with it. The ruling here is my opinion, and only my opinion. These men are neither heroes nor villains. They are the most ruthless students of human nature, whoever turned psychology into a balance sheet. They understood one thing before the rest of the world admitted it: people don't buy products. People buy stories about themselves. That's not fraud. It's not art. It's something in between, and it's worth several $1 trillion. The jury will now deliberate. Next case. Next on trial: Elon Musk, charged with building the future by making everyone else's present feel obsolete. The opening statement drops this week. Subscribe so you don't miss the opening argument. Court is adjourned. See you in the next one.